His first job was to dig up dirt on Chappaquiddick, the controversial drowning incident which destroyed Senator Edward Kennedy's presidential chances. Ulasewicz travelled the country in search of damaging information on the Kennedys and Nixon's other enemies.
Who gave me my assignments, they came from anywhere around the throne, whether it was from Nixon himself, whether it was Haldeman or Ehrlichman, and it really didn't matter to me. I didn't care if Jehoshaphat was in charge. I did the job as I was asked to do.
On the 12th of June 1971, Nixon's elder daughter Tricia married law student Edward Cox. The president described it as his happiest day in the White House. But the happiness was short-lived. The next day, coverage of the wedding was upstaged in the nation's leading newspaper. The New York Times led with the Pentagon Papers, a massive leak of top-secret documents tracing 3 decades of growing U.S. involvement in Vietnam. These were the secrets of earlier administrations, but Nixon's national security advisor hit the roof.
Henry Kissinger came in and he just threw across his desk, the Oval Office desk, or where I was sitting, 3 telegrams that he received. And he said, these are just some. One was from Canada, one was from Australia. Another one, which concerned me very much, was from Ceausescu in Romania, expressing concern about whether or not their conversations that they had had on a confidential basis were subject to being made public. Henry said, we are living actually in a revolutionary period. And he says, we have got to stop this.
What kind of a civilization is this where its leaders leak its secrets and betray the nation to its enemies and, you know, that kind of stuff? It was not simply a leak. It was a theft. And it was a theft by somebody that Kissinger knew and heartily disliked.
2.5 million tons of bombs ago. In October 1969, my friend Tony Russo and I began copying the Pentagon Papers to give them to the American Congress and share them with the American public. The American public didn't get them then. It took 2 invasions later before the newspapers began releasing them. They've got them now. They've got them now.
As the Pentagon Papers became a bestseller, Nixon learned that Ellsberg had got his hands on yet more secret documents. They were now in the possession of a Washington think tank, the Brookings Institution.
It was the government in exile for the liberal Kennedy-type Democrats who hoped to be back in power, and the Brookings Institution had plans after the Pentagon Papers came out to put out a further study with regard to the conduct of the war in 1969 and 1970.
1969 was the year Nixon came to power. This new study threatened to expose his own secret negotiations.
I was in the president's office one night, and the president turned to me and he said, you get a hold of John Ehrlichman and you tell him to get a hold of the Pentagon, to get a hold of the FBI, do whatever is necessary. I want those documents back from Brookings.
The president's private eye was told to case the joint.
They bring me in for this thing with this Brookings Institute. And I went in as a tourist, and I reported by phone, no written report, that it was certainly a great-looking establishment, all marble halls, well guarded.
To get past the guards, Colson proposed to Ehrlichman an unorthodox approach.
He came up with this idea to start a fire. And in the confusion of fighting the fire, somebody would go in and lift these papers.
I said, I don't care how you do it, the president wants the papers back. That's all I know.
Word of Colson's scheme reached the president's young counsel, John Dean. 2 years later, Dean would bring down the Nixon administration by exposing its conspiracies, including the one that was now brought to him.
He said, Chuck Colson has got a scheme that is the craziest thing I've ever heard. He wants me to firebomb the Brookings Institute. I said, what are you talking about? So I immediately went in to see Ehrlichman, told him of the absurdity of this plan and scheme, and found a very unruffled John Ehrlichman, who sort of looked up over his glasses at me and raised his eyebrows, and he said, well, maybe we should call it off.
10 days later, the New York Times published another damaging leak. An innocuous-looking story gave away to the Soviets the US fallback position in nuclear missile negotiations. The president summoned Ehrlichman and his protege, Bud Krogh.
When I walked in, the president was standing up behind his desk. Then he started to pace back and forth, and he told me that this kind of leak was intolerable, that we just could not stand any more of them. I remember him slamming his fist into his hand, saying how dangerous this was and it had to be stopped.
He wanted lie detector tests given to everybody. He wanted the name of the guy who was responsible. He wanted telephone taps. He wanted, this and that and this and that. A lot of hyperbole, a lot of hubris in the Oval Office.
The president's demand for lie detector tests on a massive scale was recorded, like everything said in the Oval Office, by the hidden taping system he had just installed. Nixon's first target was his foreign policy staff.
What I want the polygraph. I want that to be done now. That should include everybody in the staff, for example. You start with that. Include about 100 people that probably 400 or 500 states, 400 or 500 in Spain, and 200 or 300 over at CIA. And that's it. They're clumsy. They ask a lot of tough questions, personal questions about a man's sex life, about what his mother was like. I don't know anything about polygraphs, and I don't know how accurate they are, but I know they'll scare the hell out of you.
Put fear into these people was how Ehrlichman noted the president's instruction. But the FBI dragged its feet and never identified the leakers for Nixon.
He wanted somebody punished. Somebody had deliberately set about to frustrate his bargaining strategy.
The man Nixon wanted punished was Daniel Ellsberg, who he feared had opened the floodgates.
He was made basically a national hero. If that idea began to permeate through the bureaucracy with all the leaks that had already occurred, and the proliferation of leaks that were developing now, I knew that if that idea became more and more prevalent, that it would mean that we would be leaked to death.
His approach was to try and smear Daniel Ellsberg, to get all kinds of derogatory information about him and to leak it. The president was pounding on us every day, what about Ellsberg, what have they found out, and so on. Finally, we had to say to him, Hoover won't cooperate.
Nixon, once again blocked by FBI Director Hoover, enlarged his private police force. Instead of a few ex-cops, he now set up a full-time unit within the White House. Their first task was to deal with Ellsberg.
The problem was, since we can't put the guy behind bars for what he did, or nobody thinks that the chances are very good, what else can be done to at least destroy his image?
Hunt put to Colson a plan for the neutralization of Ellsberg. Ellsberg had been in psychoanalysis, and Hunt thought his medical notes could be used to smear him. So he suggested they obtain Ellsberg's files from his psychiatric analyst.
The way we would have met that challenge back when I was in the FBI was we would have pulled what is called a black bag job, a surreptitious entry, a covert operation, and simply taken the records. And Hunt said, well, that's a good idea.